Very briefly, going to introduce a very critical topic, and it's a very brief presentation from our friend Michael Green, the Center for Environmental Health. He's the CEO there, and they are really connecting the health of the planet to health of all of us. And he actually is going to be passing out some items. So I think folks are going to be passing out some items for the audience. Hopefully you have those. With that, please join me in welcoming Michael to the stage.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everybody. So I want to talk about the relationship between our personal health and the health of the planet. And as I give a couple examples, you're going to see that it also is going to be potentially relevant for climate and regenerative agriculture and accelerating the process of leaving the fossils in the ground as soon as we can. This is my daughter, Juliet. She's awesome. She's totally awesome. And, well, I think so. And she and I were part of a cohort of school-aged and parent pairs who were tested for glyphosate in our bodies. So glyphosate is Roundup. It's manufactured by Monsanto. It's the largest herbicide used in the US. And she's chock full of it. So I didn't give permission as her father to Monsanto to do that. And she didn't give her permission, obviously. It's not right. I want to ask you to do me a favor, and I hope this isn't too woo-woo for you, but I'd like to ask you to open up the little pouch you have, and in it there's going to be like, a handful of Cheerios, maybe 5 Cheerios, and put the Cheerios in your hand. Don't eat them, just put them in your hand. And now I want to ask you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine, don't eat them, but just imagine eating the Cheerios. And imagine the nutrients in the Cheerios going down into your stomach. And imagine them going to into your blood from your stomach. And those nutrients going to every part of your body. And imagine those nutrients making your body strong and alive. Now also imagine the glyphosate, because we tested the Cheerios and we found glyphosate in there. Imagine that going through. And imagine the glyphosate, a carcinogen, a hormone-mimicking chemical, also going through every vein and artery in your body. Okay, go ahead, open your eyes if you had them closed. So first of all, those are organic Cheerios, so you can eat them. There's no glyphosate. Second of all, that's the microbiome I was just talking about in your body. But think about the macrobiome. So just like the veins in your body are distributing both nutrients and man-made petrochemicals that can harm us, rivers like this one are doing that for the global Earth. It's not that different. So where does with the glyphosate, I described it, with the rivers, those are flowing into the ocean. And that's causing petrochemicals, whether they were used to make, or petroleum, whether they were used to make petrochemicals for herbicides or for these plastic bottles, both of them are creating harm to our Earth. So that's my problem statement. Now I want to talk about the solutions. So I have 2. The first one is a relatively small game. It may sound like a big game, but it's a relatively small game, and that's around accountability. And then the second one is about partnerships. So a few folks already spoke about partnerships today, so I just want to build on that. Okay, so the first accountability I want to talk about is if you're reading the paper, you might have seen that Monsanto has lost a bunch of cases around cancer and glyphosate. So what's happening is judges are saying, Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, you have to pay tens of millions of dollars to this person or that person because they got cancer as a result of your glyphosate. And that way, those people can use that money for health care and for whatever their needs are. But what it also does is it creates a different calculus for the companies who are making those kinds of chemicals. Because now, all of a sudden, if there are enough $10 million, $50 million settlements, judgments that go against the chemical companies, then the same thing's going to happen to Roundup that happened to tobacco when I was a kid. So that's the first of my 2 accountability examples. The second one's about this guy. His name's Rob Balat. So Rob took on DuPont in a small town in West Virginia where DuPont had contaminated the town with a category of chemicals called PFAS chemicals. So those are fluorinated chemicals. Teflon is one that you know. Gore-Tex is another one you know. There are DuPont deeply contaminated this town. Children were born with birth defects. People got cancer. Property was made valueless because you couldn't have cattle there. And Rob took DuPont on, and what he did was he forced them to actually compensate the community so they could pay for their health care, so they could buy new, so they could buy new, so they could move someplace where they could have cattle. And so that kind of accountability also can create profound change. Now I want to talk about the big game, because the accountability is the small game. The big game is partnerships. So I'm going to stick with Rob. So Rob has a book coming out about his battle with DuPont, and it's coming out on October 8th. And then around Christmas time, Mark Ruffalo is coming out with a movie that he produced, and he is playing Rob Balot in. So Mark, the environmental activist actor, and Rob, the David and Goliath butt kicker, are going to start collaborating on messaging and storytelling about DuPont, sure, but also about just corporate accountability and imagining a world that's better than the one that was happening in this small town in West Virginia. So I'm going to give 3 more examples of partnerships. But before I do, I want to tell you, Rob's book's coming out October 8th. October 7th in San Francisco, at our annual dinner, at the Center for Environmental Health annual dinner, Rob and Mark are going to come, and they're going to talk about DuPont, and they're going to talk about corporate accountability, and they're going to talk about how to create the world we want. So please feel free to join the 3 of us and others that night if you want, and you're able to be in San Francisco that night. Okay, so here's 3 other partnerships. The first one is in the schools. So sure, there's glyphosate in the food. Of course, you probably thought of that when I did the little exercise with the Cheerios, which I hope were yummy. And they're not just the glyphosate. It's not just the food. It's also what they're serving the food on. So if you think about schools, they used to have plates, but now they use disposable foodware. And what we see is that the disposable foodware is often contaminated with the same chemical class that Rob just fought DuPont over, PFAS chemicals. So we tested all the disposable foodware used in schools, and we found a lot of them had these chemicals in them. And there's really strong data that it goes from the food to, it goes from the plates to the food. So we're dosing these kids, and that's not right either. So the largest school districts in the country, Chicago, New York, LA, a bunch of others, they're all working together around their procurement in the schools. And what they're doing is they are pushing the foodware providers that with us to say, we're not going to buy that foodware anymore if it's got these fluorinated compounds, if it's got PFAS in it. And then after that, then we're going after the glyphosate in the food. 2 more examples of partnerships. One is that at the Center for Environmental Health, we do a lot of pledges. Our first pledge ever was to ask very large purchasers to say, we won't buy furniture with chemical flame retardants in them anymore. These flame retardants actually don't retard flames, but they do give people cancer. And so then Kaiser and Google and Genentech. Now, if there's a partnership with the Center for Environmental Health that is surprising, it's Genentech. And very large purchasers, the University of California system, signed a pledge saying, we won't buy furniture with those chemicals anymore. And so what happens next, over the last 5 years, because of that and other reasons, is the entire market shifted. 5 years ago, almost all the furniture had these toxic chemicals in them. Today, almost none of them do. The second and last example I want to give is I was at a conference about 4 weeks ago, and it was called Unwrapped. And at this conference, there were 4 kinds of people. There were health advocates like me. There were people working on plastic waste in the ocean. There were academics, and there were private sector folks. And in that meeting, what happened was I met all kinds of people and learned all kinds of new information that I didn't know, people I didn't know. And now there's these working groups, and there's these new collaborations that are building so that we can empower the plastic waste activists, and the plastic waste activists can empower us around protecting people from toxic chemicals. It's beautiful. It's incredible. It's how we can create profound change in the world. And if we do this kind of stuff well, then 10-year-old girls can live their life healthy without toxic chemicals in their blood, and they can paddle on rivers in their canoe, but those rivers don't have toxic chemicals in them, going into oceans that aren't full of toxic chemicals. So Please join me in looking for partnerships. You can email me and also with each other. Thank you very much.